And good morning, and again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one more great Dojo Live, connecting experts like you, precisely like you. My name is Carlos Ponce, joining you from Nearsoft's Mexico City office. And for our 10th interview of Season 4 and Travel Edition, we're going to be chatting with Doug Kennedy. He is the president at Kennedy Training Network. Hi, Doug.
Hello, Carlos. Hola.
Hey. Hola. It's a pleasure to have you here, Doug. So, well, Kennedy Training Network is the lodging industry's best source for hotel training programs and services topic areas like hotel reservation sales, hospitality and guest service excellence, front desk, profit optimization, upselling, hoteling. But Doug is going to tell us all about it. So today we're going to be discussing the blending hotel sales best practices. Sorry about that. We're going to be discussing hotel sales best practices for the era of electronic inquiries. Right, Doug?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to start off, Doug, if I may, after a big, heartfelt, warm welcome. Tell us a little bit. Let's start with that. Tell us about you and about the Kennedy Training Network. Welcome to today's show.
Right. Well, thank you, Carlos. I'm really happy to be participating today and appreciate the opportunity, and welcome to everyone who's joining us. So I have actually been in the hospitality training space, pretty much always in lodging for most of my adult life. I wish I had a better story that it was my game plan all along, but pretty much kind of an accident. I needed a job when I was 20 years old. My parents sold the family business that I worked in from a very young age, and back then we went to something called a newspaper. I don't know, perhaps some of our audience has seen one of those in a museum, but anyways, started working for the Marriott family in hotels, later in hotel management, and in my late 20s, I started in the training business. So it's actually my third company that I've either owned or co-owned. Had KTN for about 10 years. We do training worldwide, mostly in Mexico, US, Canada, and the Caribbean. As you mentioned, and thanks for that little plug there, I do training in the reservations for hospitality and guest service, and increasingly a lot in our subject today, which is hotel sales, because a lot is changing in all these areas, but I think particularly hotel sales. And I say that inclusively, you know, catering sales, hotel groups, hotel events, conferences. So that cues us up for today's theme.
Absolutely, it certainly does. So thank you for that, Doug. Okay, we of course questions are going to be popping up throughout the course of the conversation. But before we get into that, just as a quick reminder for those of you who are watching, you can send your questions for Doug right here on Twitter, this is our handle. You can see that right at the very bottom at DojoLIVE. You know how to use Twitter. Now we have 280 characters now, so take advantage of that and ask great questions for Doug. All right. While we wait for the questions from the audience, I hope we get many or some. I have my first question is, you have been involved with hotel sales for many years, originally working in sales and then for over 2 decades, conducting training for major hotel companies and brands. How has this, in this sense, how has the sales process changed from both the buyer and the supplier sides of the equation?
It's a whole different world today. I often say, you know, I do a lot of conference speaking, which to me is a lot of fun, but most of my world is hotel training, where I'm actually working with 5, 10 people in a hotel sales team on site or in a conference situation. And I always like to talk about how if we took one of the salespeople, you know, back when I worked in the industry in hotel sales, my last job in the industry in the late 80s, if we took somebody from that era, put them in one of those H.G. Wells time machines. I don't know if anyone else reads historic fiction, but you know, H.G. Wells invented that and brought them into today's world. It would be a completely different environment. And I think the major change, well, let's talk about on the, well, really the buyer and the seller. You know, we used to have a lot more inbound sales, but also outbound prospecting. So, you know, back then, let's talk about buyers first, Carlos. How's that sound?
Perfect. Go ahead.
So buyers, they would go to something called the Hotel Travel Index, which was a big, thick catalog, probably, I don't know, 5 centimeters wide. And, you know, it had in there a directory of every hotel in the entire world at the time. And they would go through, or they would go to meetings and conventions, which was a little bit thinner. And they would go through and they would make a phone call. And so, you know, that was our favorite thing, a call-in lead in hotel sales. And, you know, there was a finite number that a reasonable human being would spend their time doing, because who's got time, you know? So they call 3 or 4 places, talk to 3 or 4 people. 3 or 4 properties would then respond with a proposal via US mail or international post. And, you know, they would sit down, go over those proposals, have a couple of conversations, maybe fly out and actually do a FAM tour, familiarization or a site inspection. And then they would decide. So, you know, calling leads were a really hot thing, and you had a pretty much a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chance of closing. Now, if we take that H.G. Wells time machine from late 80s, when I like to point out, I was very young then, Carlos. I've been doing this a long time, but
probably I was too.
You know what I'm saying, right? But anyways, you take that time machine to today, put that salesperson in, and now what we have is really lead spam. Okay, we have too many leads. Now this person from the 80s would be like, what? I want that problem. You know, we would come back from lunch and then we had the pink message pads on the pin, and boom, you know, the admin, we had admins back then, and there would be 3 or 4, you know, leads coming in. We'd all be fighting over those leads. But today, salesperson open up their inbox and, you know, let's say you usually have 10 inquiries, and today you see 30 or 40. Now, salespeople, if you're watching today, how many of you do this? If there's 3 times as many leads as normal, look at all these leads. So we have too many leads. Planners go to websites. They use Cvent. They use Meeting Broker if they're part of a brand. If they're a bride-to-be, they're planning the wedding on the Knot, Wedding Wire. They're going to sites like some of them that a lot of hotel salespeople don't see any value in, but there's still some nuggets in there. They go to Hotel Planner. They go to a third party, Helms Briscoe or many others. You're not even talking to the buyer anymore. You're talking to, actually, more often than not, the planner is a former salesperson. You know, a lot of my friends in the meeting planning business used to work in hotel sales, and they actually tell the hotel salesperson, look, here's what you got to do to sell my group to your revenue manager. So you have better educated planners that had 1 click of a button and a few checks of a few boxes. A lead no longer goes to 3, it goes to 10 or more. You have on the receptor side, on the buyer, on the seller side, too many leads. So what happens is, the end result, people struggle to keep up. They either do not respond, and non-response rates are huge. Okay, now we have a telephone mystery shopping and email mystery shopping team here at KTN. That's a lot of my side business, shameless plug there. But we do group sales, catering sales, inquiries. When we call, we tend to have a higher response rate. But when we inquire through electronic channels, non-response rates can be into the high 20s to 30s. So people either don't respond. Now, some of them don't respond because maybe, you know, they don't have the space during that date. But wouldn't you want to respond? Because that sender might say, oh, our plans are not flexible. But sure enough, when they find out everybody else is sold out, oh, suddenly they become flexible. So we struggle on the seller side. We struggle to respond at all. When we do respond, we send too often generic content. Okay, so now we have 10 RFPs go out, 10 proposals come back. Actually, 8 come back because 2 don't reply. Out of the 8, 7 of them look exactly the same. Thank you so much for your inquiry, or bride. Oh, congratulations on the big day. And then either there's 5 PDFs attached, or they're using the latest $20,000, you know, planner, which is maybe a link, or they're using some really good sites like eProposal. But at the end of the day, it's all the same stuff. Too many attachments, too many links, too much information overload. The poor buyer, their head is spinning, and they get spam back that doesn't stand out. And both parties are frustrated. So that's where we're at, Carlos.
Okay, thank you so much, Doug. That leads me to there's something else that I wanted to ask you is about the technology side of the equation, which is what are what new technologies are out there that sales using, or better utilizing for that matter?
Okay, let's talk about some that are not new. Okay, first, and then we're going to talk about some that are really new, which makes me super excited. The ones that are not new are systems like Delphi, like Salesforce, and many others. I don't want to shortchange many of the other great vendors out there, but those are the two that have the biggest market share. You have Opera Sales and Catering. You've got some other, brand proprietary stuff. If you're part of Starwood, Isaac. But what happens is a lot of these products are being used, these tools are being used just to block inventory. So we have this fantastic Delphi system, and it's only being used to hold space. You might as well go back for all the money you're spending. Go back to what we call the diary, which was a big book with all the hotel space. Okay, we don't really want to go back there.
Yeah.
But what happens is they have all these leads, and I actually do something really interesting for my clients, that if they really want to improve sales, before I go out and do a 1 or a 2-day sales training, I do a sales process assessment. And I go to the hotel or the resort or whatever, and I sit in there and I go to the lead origination point. So I find, let's say, 3 to 4 random leads per salesperson. And then if you're in sales, I would sit down with you and I'd say, okay, Carlos, we got this lead 90 days ago. What do we do? And then, did you call them? Oh, yeah, I called them. Well, show me documentation of your conversation. Did you send an email? Oh, yeah, I did. Well, show me your email. And what I find is the majority of people have Delphi, but they're not putting call notes in there. They're not tracing it out on a lead stream or a task list. Instead, they have this big pile of paper, and then they have Outlook inbox, and then they have a mishmash of folders that every hotel salesperson, and again, I'm being generic, it could be catering sales. Every hotel salesperson on the team has a different folder system, okay? And they don't know where the stuff is. So they're not, as a result, and meanwhile, going back to the difference now, the planner used to schedule a call and say, okay, Carlos, my conference is coming up. Let's talk next Thursday. And the planner would have a list, and they would go through everything on the list. But now the planner at midnight says, oh, question for Carlos. Let me text him. Oh, question for Carlos. Let me send him a message on LinkedIn. Oh, question for Carlos. Let me leave him a voicemail. Now the poor salesperson, their head is spinning. All this messaging is coming in. They've got a stack of paper. They've got Outlook messages, some of which are flagged, okay, or they try to put them in folders. And then they have this thing, Delphi, Salesforce, Isaac, whatever it is. Now, I do want to point out, this is not just baby boomers and Gen Xers, okay? I'm talking about millennials, first job out of hotel school or first job out of college, or maybe work their way up in operations through the front desk. And you would think automatically, because of everything we hear about millennials, they love technology, okay? But they try to live life from the iPhone, okay? And then they're trying to integrate with Outlook, but they still have their paper. I sat with one of the brightest young women I've seen, and she said she was trained by, an older person that said, oh, you have to keep the paper. On top of it all, she had a whiteboard. I forgot to mention that, of her hot beats. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how these people live. I mean, as far as with all the stress, so that's, so technology. Start using your Delphi, directors of sales, mandate it, pick that date of the drop dead date. It's almost like entering, people that are going to enter rehab. On this date, I'm putting down the bottle, or I'm putting down the overeating, or whatever it is. On this date, our whole team is going to embrace Delphi. When we get a call, we're putting the notes in Delphi. When we get an email, we're going to either send it through Delphi if you're integrated in the newer Delphi versions, or we're going to cut and paste, or at least we're going to put a note in Delphi that we sent it. You've got to use these tools. There's just too much coming at us at once. Absolutely. So that's the current tools. Did you want to ask me about the new tools, or?
Yeah, well, before we get into that, there's something that popped into my head, and if I may, I'd like to ask you about this. Um, you mentioned the millennials and how they're a lot of these folks that are younger that are sales or any other area. Well, it might be easy, but for example. Well, in my case, for example, I'm 51 and I've been working in the area for many years. But my there who are the sales part, but are 50, 55, 60, and then really good at sales and they're excel at sales, but they're having hard to embrace technology, and as you know, it evolves. So, what would you tell them in order to? How would you encourage them to embrace another sales process? I'm curious about that, Doug. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, I just lost you. I heard everything except which are we talking about? Are we talking about the boomers and first generation Gen Xers?
Yes.
Yeah, them about technology or the millennials?
No, I want to people who might be over 50.
Okay.
That my rocket sales have a lot of experience in hotel sales, but they might be having a little bit of a hard time trying to embrace technology and technology tools. So what sort of advice would you give them in order to encourage them to embrace technology seamlessly?
That is a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. First of all, I have to say, you know, regardless of how many studies you see on demographics, be careful not to stereotype. I have seen some of my 60-year-old couple year from a retirement people that are all over technology. And I have seen some of those millennials straight out of college, just moved up from sales coordinator, that are a mess. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think I would prefer to answer that question with the people that just haven't jumped in yet. Now, there is a generational thing to some extent. Mm-hmm. You know, I sat down in one of my sales process audits with the director of sales, you know, that didn't know how to search Outlook messages. Okay. So, I mean, there are those people, but remember, they have a lot of knowledge. They have a ton of relationships. They know many of them been at the same property for a while. So what we really need there is keyboard coaching. Okay. So if you're a new PM or a DOS or a regional and you've got that person, they are worth it. They are loyal. You know, sit down with them, go through their process and help them. And that's what I did. You know, teach them how to create email folders that make sense. Show them how to use Delphi. Not having the Delphi trainer, which are really good Delphi trainers, we love you. But a one-day Delphi class is not going to teach someone. Now, I think that also goes for millennials. You have to coach them because they may know how to work that iPhone, okay, or you download the latest app, but they don't have the understanding of the process. Okay, so a lot of them really think that, oh, the lead comes in through CVent. And I say, okay, well, what did you do? I replied through CVent. So did everybody else. If you want to be assured to get as much business as everyone else gets, do the same things everyone else does. Some of the times the lead in CVent, and I forgot, CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau leads come through platforms. Mm-hmm. I have gone in there to the lead and it says, this meeting planner prefers to be called, or feel free to call this planner if the salesperson has questions. What do? They reply back. And I say, well, didn't you want to call, especially that one? Oh, well, if they would have wanted to talk, they would have called me. You know, because maybe they don't like to talk on the phone. And so remember, you know, one of the things I learned from training Kimpton Hotels when it was Kimpton Hotels separately was the platinum rule. And it really ties into hospitality, but in this context, sales. The golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay? Yeah, but the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. Okay? So, if they say to be called, then call them. Now, I think if you interviewed meeting planners, and actually I have a survey of meeting planners I would love to talk about later when we get to, if we have time. But, you know, if you surveyed planners, would you like the salesperson to call you? They would probably be like, no, just reply in the platform. However, The phone rings, ring, ring. I'll be the planner now. I'm going to go into character. Doug Kennedy. Oh, hi there. Now, if you're like, hello, I'm Carlos. I'm calling about your inquiry, and I wanted to see if you got my proposal. Yes, I'm good. Thanks. Bye. But if you say, Doug Kennedy, good afternoon, Mr. Kennedy. This is Carlos from Brand X Hotel, and I did see your inquiry, but I just had a couple of brief questions so we can respond in a more personalized way. That person will be, okay. And then you say, so blah, 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 how you doing? Oh, Mexico City, how are you doing? How did things work out? You make rapport as you go. And by the end, the person is thinking, wow, that salesperson wants my business. So if you want to do what everyone else, get the business everyone else gets, do what everybody else does. If you're happy with market share, log off this webinar, okay, and you know, keep doing it. And right now in an up market, you will still do fine. But when the next downturn comes, you're gonna be treading water.
Absolutely. And with what you just did, you know, when I just need to ask you a couple of questions so we can personalize. All that has to do with a lot more with being more than a salesman. You become a consultant. So and I like that approach, and I relate to that. You engage with the prospect. But anyway, before we go off topic, because I tend to do that sometimes when I get excited about these things, I have another question: is how can hotels, and especially sales staff in particular, in hotels, and hospitality leaders in general, how can they prepare for a future of chatbot services, for example, or expanded loyalty ecosystems, staffless lobbies, and tech-driven guest experiences? Can you tell us about that, please?
I would love to talk about that. I love technology. Okay, now I am gonna jump back to our other topic. For example, well, actually, let me say this. I love technology when you use high tech for high touch. And let's get rid of a lot of the things that are routine. Okay, for example, in reservations departments, a lot of people are saying, oh, my calls are down. That must mean that no one is interested in calling. The calls are down because they no longer call to say, what is the taxi fare from the airport? What is your fax number? Do you take pets? They know all those things online. So when somebody still calls, you probably have a hot prospect. They might say, you know, I'm just checking a rate, but the fact is they're comparing you online. Same is true in hotel sales. Fewer touch points. Okay, we don't have them calling. They send the proposal through email from our Contact Us website or through Delphi. But when they do call, you better be really good at calling. Now, how do we follow up? We reply in the platform, good. Place a phone call, even better. But if you really want to stand out, use video email, all right? So if anyone is interested and they email me, you're going to put my contact info. I will send them a sample. So what you do is use the latest platforms. Actually, in the email is me going, hola, Carlos, and I have your name on a whiteboard or I actually have a big screen TV on my other wall here. And I will put your name, Carlos, from Brand X Planning Company. And they get a 60-second or less personalized video email embedded in the email. Or if they're watching it on a device, it will stream and loop the first 5 seconds. So that's how we use this stuff. You know, if you want to eliminate front desk check-in, then have somebody there in the lobby to talk to your guests. You know, if we as an industry, and actually I have a picture. Let me see if I can. I'm working on a program now. This actually, to me, is an image I use all the time in my live webinars, like I'll be doing later today. We as an industry are at a fork in the road. So everybody else is following like lemmings down this road to like saying, oh, those millennials, they love tech, they're never gonna call, they don't wanna have a front desk person. But some of us are gonna go this way. If you go this way, your brand will become irrelevant. Brands copycat each other on amenity wars. They all get the latest platform. They're all stretching for the latest in-room tech. How much in-room tech have we added over the years that never got used? Fax machines, for example. Every hotel had to have a fax machine. By the time they all got installed, faxing was out. You know, we put in direct TV. Now everybody wants to watch Netflix. You know, so sure, we have to keep up on all the tech. I love tech. but don't replace the experience. If you do, hotel rooms will all be sold on OTAs. OTAs want to be in the meeting planning business. They're going to succeed. Or you can be over here. You know, why don't we have video customer service agents? It is 2018 practically. We don't have a video. You and I are talking right now in Mexico City to Miami. Why don't we have a click to click? We have click to chat, maybe. Why don't we have click to talk? How much would it cost to have somebody there manning a Skype line that talks to a person for 3 minutes? Oh, labor costs. Oh my gosh, that's going to cost us. Let's give that employee $20 US an hour, okay, above a living wage. Let's say they take 5 calls an hour, 4-minute calls. I think they could do that. That's 20 minutes out of a working hour. Let's say they get 2 bookings. What would those 2 bookings have cost you if you paid an OTA commission? But we don't think like that. We go for the latest thing that everyone else has. Oh, mobile bookings are the way to go. You go to these conferences and people drink the Kool-Aid on the data. Oh, 70% of bookings are done on mobile. At what hotel? Yeah, if you're a Hotwire bookings, 70% might come through mobile. But the places I train, you know, I've been down your way at 5-star resorts. Well, not exactly your way. But, well, actually your way. 5-star hotels in Mexico City, 5-star resorts in Cancun. People still call. One of my clients is, I don't want to, I haven't got permission to say their name, but they're probably the most famous lifestyle hotel in South Beach. All right, there's 2 or 3 down there. Their average guest is 30 years old. Reason for travel is the 30th birthday, the most important event in a millennial's life. And the rates are about $500 a night. Do you know about 1/3 of their calls, 1/3 of their bookings come through voice? So millennials, when their life gets older and they give up the dog, you know, millennials love pets. I have actually 4 nieces and nephews that are millennials. They give up the, well, they still have the dog, but they start to have kids probably later in life. Life gets complicated. Grandparents get old. Babies have special needs. Are they really going to want to book it on their app alone when you're dragging along a baby and grandma with, you know, that just had surgery? You're going to call. Or even better, you're going to click a button and talk to someone.
Right.
So we got to embrace high tech, but we got to also go the opposite direction. I'm going to tell you one more quick story. You know, I'm a parent. I did have my children later in life. I have Generation Z kids, which is what they're calling the post-millennials. You know, millennials was originally going up to 1996. Now some people move that up. My kids were born 97 and 99. The end of 97, actually my daughter's birthday's coming up. They are very different than millennials. And one of the major differences is, yeah, they love tech, but they love video. You know, my son has dated girls through video, which I'm okay with. My daughter banks at a bank we have up here called TD Bank, and their ads are all about personalization. Now, my daughter has a question on her bank account. You know, I've been kind of reminding her, please give a call and find out where this deposit is, that we don't know where this deposit came from. And she keeps on saying, oh, Dad, I'm just going to go in. She doesn't want to call, and she doesn't want to chat. They have click to chat. She wants to go into the lobby, and if you walk into TD Bank, there's plenty of staff. So which path are you going to take, hoteliers? You know, go ahead this way. Your brand will become irrelevant. OTAs will own the business. Guest loyalty programs, that's people like you and me, you know, our age. Boomers now, I'm sorry, millennials don't really care about loyalty because they have it on their favorite card. Sorry to get off topic, but you know, we covered.
No, perfect. That's cool.
You know, so don't count on the staff going away. If you do, then give it up to Airbnb right now. It's a great app. Start putting all your rooms on there. Put electronic locks. Cut everybody except for housekeeping, and even outsource them, because that's where you're going to go. You know, or be about high tech for high touch. Rehumanize your guest. Whatever touch points are left with your guests, make them valuable. And that's where my clients are going.
Absolutely. And yeah, it has to do with what I think, in a way, with what we mentioned at the beginning, before we went on the air. It's about the human part of the equation. It's always about the human. In the end, from my standpoint, it's always about the human side of the equation, definitely.
Hospitality, right?
Yeah, of course. It's about the experiences that you go through, that you encounter. And these are unique. These are, I don't know, it's... there needs to be a balance between, you know, technology side.
I'm going to pull something out. If we take that out, We become anonymous. We are just another commodity. Yes, our room is 400 square feet. Oh, we have Starbucks coffee. Who cares? We have white remote controls, and everyone has white remote controls now. We all copy each other. But the one thing you can't copy and commoditize is humans.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you on that. Doug, we're approaching the final minutes of today's interview, and I still have one more question. This is in preparation for the future, say within the next 5 or 10 years, for example. What do you think? What would you say that? What should experience-based guest services, for example, hotel sales colleagues, focus in order to become the hallmark of hotel offerings, in order to personalize the sales and service experience?
Keep doing the tech. Make it convenient. But when somebody contacts you, rehumanize it. Now, what should we do? Okay, so, the leaders, what should they do to manage the folks coming in? Teach them about life on the other side of the front desk. Teach them about life on the other end of the email inquiry or the chat or the phone call. Teach them about what's going on in room 701. And a lot of it is hospitality. One of the reasons I've been successful for 28 years, I've been in the training business. Everybody else teaches hospitality as if it's a series of communication technique. Smile at the guest, use their name 3 times, ask how their day is going. Okay, so I can say, good afternoon, Carlos. Nice to see you. How's your day going? Good, that's good. Right? Well, I smile, I use your name and ask how your day went, right? That's hospitality. But we all know it's not. So how do we train it beyond the communication skill? I actually have, let me grab another visual aid here. I have a book, shameless plug, available on Amazon and Kindle. So you really like working with people. And this book is all about rehumanizing the guest. Now, today we call that guest empathy. There's a lot of writers, my fellow writers for the trade magazines. We talk about guest empathy. Teach them it is not just check-in 29, call 31, email wedding inquiry 7 of the week. Somebody is planning that event. Somebody is planning a really important trip. And when we think about the other person, it's a lot easier to empathize and to understand what life is like. So if you want to have great service, yes, teach politeness, using the name 3 times, eye contact. We do have to train those things. But teach the reasons why people travel. Are they staying at hospitals? Are they there alone on business for a long time? Talk about the stories playing out every day. If we do that, you will be in the experience business, not the room rental business.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Absolutely. Doug, what's the book that you showed us? With us again, please.
So you really like working with people. Okay, and it's available on Amazon and also Kindle.
So it's on Amazon and Kindle. Perfect.
That's my hospitality book. It's not hotel sales, but it's 70 pages, short reads, sound bites, but it's all about the principles of what's in it for me when we give great service.
Okay, awesome. So we're reading that. And the only thing left for me to do now is, before we wrap up, is, final words of wisdom, either current or in the future, that you would like to leave our audience with?
Let's go back to sales, because that's how we lured in a lot of our audience today with the title of Best Practices. Sure. Be really good at process and be really good at people. And our traditional salespeople were people, right? And then over time, process has evolved. So you might have those traditional sales personalities. They need to work on process. Then you've got a lot of the younger people that focus on process, but they don't integrate people. When you put the 2 together, okay, then we encounter, I should do it this way, the heart of hospitality. Process meets people. You will stand out. Reply in the platform. Reply promptly, but call because you just had a few questions. Embrace video email. Get over your shyness to be on camera. Send a video email. Send a personal handwritten note. You know, go analog while they're going digital. Whatever you can do to embrace people and process, you're going to be successful.
There you have it, folks. So we need to wrap up today's interview, unfortunately, but and actually, for those of you who are watching or will be watching in the future, this was Doug's interview was the last one of this week's travel edition that we're doing with the Focusrite backdrop, and so this is the closing interview for the week. The only thing left for me to do, Doug, is send you a big, heartfelt, warm thank you for having been with us today. And of course, where can we reach you at? And I know that we have the URL right here, which is below, KennedyTrainingNetwork.com, right, Doug?
My email is my first name, Doug, at KennedyTrainingNetwork.com, or info at. And I do respond personally to everyone. Please reach out. If you have a comment, question, I reply to all
folks
quickly.
Cool. What I was going to say, Doug, is that all your, of course, your contact info is going to be right there. It will be available not only when we're done with it, also website. You can check it out, folks. His contact info is going to be right there. So check it out. Contact him. Sales and towards the future. So, Doug, again, thank you so much for having been the blast, and we look forward to being in touch for the coming years.
Thank you as well, Carlos. Muchos gracias, adios. There's the extent of my Spanish, but hey, if I come down and visit you, you'll teach me some new words.
Glad to. Thank you, Doug. You have a wonderful day, and thank you, everyone. In touch. Awesome.
Fantastic.
We're off the air.
All right. Thank you.